The piano keys felt cold under my fingertips, colder than they'd ever been in the 12 years I'd been teaching. I pressed middle C and listened to the note die in the empty studio, swallowed by silence thick enough to suffocate. Outside, November rain hammered against the windows of my basement apartment in South Boston, turning the world into a watercolor blur of grays and darker grays. My phone buzzed for the 14th time in an hour. Yuri. Again. I'd stopped answering 3 days ago, after the 8th voicemail where his voice cracked with fear he tried to mask as bravado. 22 years old and still so stupidly convinced he could fix his mistakes by making bigger ones. The borrowed money had started small, he'd sworn. Just enough to cover rent after he'd lost his job at the warehouse. Then the interest had compounded. The threats had escalated. And now my baby brother, the only family I had left since our parents died in that factory fire 6 years ago, had gotten himself tangled with the kind of people who didn't accept payment plans. The Morozovs. Even thinking the name made my chest tighten. In Boston, you didn't say that name out loud unless you were ready to deal with consequences. The Morozov family controlled everything from the docks to the construction unions, from the judges who looked the other way to the police who somehow never quite managed to make charges stick. Alexei Morozov, the recently crowned heir after his father's death, was rumored to be even colder than the old man had been. I'd seen him once, from a distance, at a charity gala where the private school I taught at had performed. He'd stood apart from the crowd, tall and broad-shouldered in a black suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. His dark hair swept back from a face all sharp angles and harder edges. His eyes, even from across the room, had been unsettling. Not brown, not black, but something in between, like frozen earth in winter. He hadn't smiled once the entire evening. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Yuri's number. Unknown caller. My hand trembled as I answered. Hello? Miss LeBlanc. The voice was smooth, accented faintly with something Eastern European. Not a question. He knew exactly who I was. My name is Dmitry Morozov. I believe you know why I'm calling. Ice flooded my veins. Where's my brother? Yuri is safe, for now. A pause, deliberate. He owes our family a considerable sum. $140,000 plus interest accumulated over the past 7 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of my piano bench, knuckles white. That's impossible. He told me 20,000. Your brother has been optimistic in his accounting. I heard the smile in his voice, cold and sharp. The question is not the amount, Miss LeBlanc. The question is how we proceed. Yuri cannot pay. This we both know. His earning potential is, shall we say, limited. I'll pay it back. The words rushed out before I could think. I have some savings, maybe 10,000. I can get a second job, work out a payment schedule. We are not a bank, Miss LeBlanc. His tone hardened. We do not offer payment schedules to those who steal from us. Your brother understood the terms when he accepted our money. Steal. The word made my stomach turn. Please, he's just a kid. He made a mistake. A costly one. Another pause. However, there may be an alternative arrangement. Something in his voice made my skin crawl. What kind of arrangement? My cousin Alexei has recently assumed leadership of our family. It's a demanding position. He requires. Shall we call it insurance against further betrayals within our organization? A guarantee of good behavior from those who owe us debts. He let that sink in. You, Miss LeBlanc, would serve as that guarantee. I don't understand. You would live in Alexei's household. You would remain there until your brother's debt is satisfied through other means we will arrange. Your presence ensures Yuri does not attempt to run or do anything further to embarrass our family. The implication crystallized slowly, horribly. You want me as a hostage. Such an ugly word. Dimitri's voice remained pleasant. Think of it as collateral, living collateral. You would be housed, fed, protected. Your brother would be free to continue his life, supervised, but unharmed. And when the debt is satisfied, you would be released. How long? That depends on many factors. 6 months, perhaps. A year at most. A year. 12 months of my life vanished into the orbit of a man whose reputation made hardened criminals nervous. I thought of my students, the 8-year-old prodigy who'd just started Chopin, the teenagers I tutored after school, who needed someone to believe they were worth more than the neighborhood expected. I thought of my basement apartment with its cracked tiles and reliable radiator, the life I'd built note by note from nothing after our parents died. Then I thought of Yuri, his crooked smile that matched our father's, the way he still called me Risa, like he had when he was 5. The promise I'd made to our mother the night she died, her hand crushing mine in that hospital bed. Take care of your brother. When? My voice sounded hollow. A car will arrive for you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pack lightly. Personal items only. He paused. Miss LeBlanc, this arrangement is mercy. Most who cross our family do not receive such consideration. I suggest you remember that. The line went dead. I sat in the silence of my studio, rain drumming its relentless rhythm against glass, and wondered if I'd just agreed to bury myself alive. The black Mercedes arrived precisely at 6, idling outside my building with tinted windows that reflected my pale face back at me. I'd packed 1 suitcase, clothes, toiletries, a photo of my parents, my grandmother's silver locket, and the worn paperback of Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov I'd been reading and rereading since college. Everything else I'd left behind, including a note from my landlord and resignation emails to the 3 schools where I taught. The driver didn't speak. He was massive, filling the front seat like a boulder, his neck thick with what might have been scars or tattoos beneath his collar. He loaded my suitcase without making eye contact and held the rear door open with professional efficiency. Miss LeBlanc, he said. Just that. Acknowledgement without warmth. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that grew progressively wealthier until we reached Beacon Hill. The Morozov estate sat behind iron gates that opened silently at our approach, revealing a 3-story mansion of pale stone and dark windows. Manicured grounds stretched in every direction, dotted with bare November trees that stood like sentinels in the gathering dusk. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And utterly wrong for someone like me. A woman met me at the entrance, late 50s, iron-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, expression carved from granite. She looked me over with the assessment of someone evaluating livestock. I am Elena Kuznetsov, she said in heavily accented English. I manage Mr. Morozov's household. You will follow my instructions exactly. You will not wander. You will not disturb Mr. Morozov. You will be invisible unless called upon. Do you understand? Yes. Yes. What? I swallowed. Yes, ma'am. A microscopic nod. Better. Come. She led me through hallways that smelled of lemon polish and old money, past rooms I caught only glimpses of, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, a sitting room with furniture that belonged in a museum. Everything was pristine, untouched, as if the house were a stage set rather than a home. My room was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a long corridor. Small but not cramped, with a single bed, a dresser, a writing desk by the window that overlooked the back gardens. The walls were cream-colored and bare. Anonymous. Like a high-end hotel room designed to be forgotten. Dinner is at 7 in the staff dining room. You eat with the household staff. Breakfast at 6. Lunch at noon. You do not take meals in your room. Elena's eyes were chips of flint. Mr. Morozov's private quarters are on the 2nd floor, east wing. You do not enter that wing for any reason. The library, conservatory, and back gardens are accessible during daylight hours. Otherwise, you remain in your room or the staff areas. Questions? When will I see my brother? You won't. She said it flatly, without sympathy. Part of the arrangement is no contact. He knows you are here. That is sufficient. My throat tightened. For how long? Until Mr. Morozov decides otherwise. She moved toward the door. Unpack. Dinner in 30 minutes. Do not be late. I met the household staff that first night around a table in a windowless room adjacent to the kitchen. There was Elena, who presided over the meal with silent authority. Dmitri, the driver who'd collected me. A cook named Irina who had kind eyes and flour permanently embedded under her fingernails. 2 younger women, Anya and Svetlana, who cleaned and did laundry and whispered to each other in rapid Russian, and Victor, the groundskeeper, who looked like he could uproot trees with his bare hands. They were polite but distant, asking no questions about why I was there. In their world, I suspected, it was safer not to know. I didn't see Alexei Morozov that night, or the next, or the week after that. He was a ghost in his own home, departing early and returning late, his presence marked only by the sound of doors closing, by Elena's sudden tensing when his car pulled up the drive, by the way the household rearranged itself around his invisible orbit. The days developed a rhythm. I woke at dawn and walked the gardens until breakfast. The November cold was bitter but clean, scrubbing my lungs of the stale air of captivity. After breakfast, I was left largely alone, so I gravitated to the library. Vast, beautiful, filled with books in at least 6 languages, many of them first editions that probably cost more than my annual salary. I read because it was the only thing that kept me from thinking too hard about the bars of my gilded cage. It was in the library, 2 weeks into my captivity, that I first heard them. Children's voices, high and bright, echoing from somewhere below. I followed the sound to a door I'd assumed was a closet, but which opened onto a narrow staircase descending to what must have been servants' quarters in an earlier era. At the bottom, I found a large common room where Irina sat at an old upright piano, her young daughter and son beside her. The girl, maybe 9, was attempting to pick out "Mary Had a Little Lamb" with 2 fingers. The boy, younger, watched with rapt attention. "I'm sorry," I said from the doorway. "I heard the piano." Irina looked up, startled, then wary. "Miss LeBlanc, the children practice here sometimes. I hope the noise does not disturb you." "No, not at all." I stepped closer, drawn despite myself. "I teach piano, taught," I corrected. "May I?" She hesitated, protective, then nodded. I slid onto the bench beside the girl. Natasha, Irina introduced her, and showed her how to curve her fingers, how to let her wrist float. Within 10 minutes, she was playing the simple melody smoothly. Her smile was incandescent. "You will teach her?" Irina asked, her voice careful. "If you'd like." And so I found my purpose in that house. Every afternoon, I descended to that forgotten common room and taught Natasha and her brother Mikhail. Natasha was a natural, with perfect pitch and the kind of determination that would take her far. Mikhail had less talent, but infinite enthusiasm. Working with them reminded me who I was beneath the label of collateral, of guarantee, of living insurance against bad debts. I was still a teacher, still myself. The weeks blurred. Thanksgiving came and went, marked only by an elaborate meal I ate with the staff, while Alexei dined alone in the formal dining room. December arrived with early snow. I'd been in the Morozov household for exactly 4 months when I saw him for the first time up close. I'd been in the library, shelving books I'd finished reading, when the door opened without warning. I turned, and there he was. Alexei Morozov was taller than I'd realized from that distant glimpse at the gala. 6'3" at least, with the kind of build that came from discipline rather than vanity. Broad shoulders tapering to a lean waist, strength evident in the way he carried himself. His dark hair was shorter now, almost military in its precision. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Not brown, not black. Gray. Storm gray, like winter seas. Fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You're Larissa LeBlanc." Not a question. "Yes." I forced myself to meet his gaze, refusing to look away first. "Mr. Morozov, you've been teaching Irina's children." My heart stuttered. Had I overstepped? Violated some unspoken rule? Yes. "I'm sorry if—" "Don't apologize." He moved into the room, each step measured, predatory. "Natasha has been practicing Beethoven. I heard her this morning." I blinked. "You heard her from all the way upstairs?" "I hear everything in this house." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I caught the scent of his cologne, something with cedar and smoke. "Elena tells me you haven't asked for anything. No phone calls, no visitors, no requests of any kind. What would be the point?" Something flickered in those gray eyes. "Most people in your position complain, demand, threaten. I'm not most people." "No." He studied me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You're not." The silence stretched between us, taut and strange. I should have looked away, should have lowered my gaze, shown deference, but something stubborn in me refused. "Your brother is well," Alexei said finally, "in case you wondered." Relief flooded through me so suddenly I had to grip the bookshelf for balance. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's not kindness. It's insurance." His voice hardened. "You stay compliant. He stays safe. That's the arrangement." "I understand." "Do you?" He stepped closer. Too close. I could see the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw despite it being barely noon. "You don't seem afraid enough. Would you prefer me terrified?" The words escaped before I could stop them. For a long moment he simply stared at me. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something darker, more complicated. "You sing," he said, changing direction, "when you think no one's listening. In the gardens. Sometimes in here." Heat crept up my neck. "I didn't realize anyone could hear." "I can. You have a beautiful voice." The compliment, so unexpected, so quietly delivered, sent a strange flutter through my chest. I pushed it down ruthlessly. "Thank you. Keep teaching the children." He moved past me toward the door. "But remember what you are here, Larissa. You're not a guest. You're not staff. You're collateral. The moment you forget, that is the moment you become a problem I have to solve." Then he was gone, leaving only the faint trail of cedar smoke and the pounding of my heart. I stood in the empty library, books forgotten in my hands, and wondered why a threat had sounded almost like a warning. The days after my encounter with Alexei in the library felt different, charged with an awareness I couldn't shake. I caught myself listening for his footsteps in the hallways, for the distant sound of his voice speaking Russian to Dmitri or Elena. I told myself it was simple vigilance, the natural hyper-awareness of prey tracking a predator. But that didn't explain why my pulse quickened when I heard his car pull up the drive at night, or why I found myself wondering what he did in those private quarters I was forbidden to enter. He'd said he heard everything in this house, which meant he'd heard me singing. The thought made my skin prickle with something I refused to examine too closely. December deepened into true winter. Snow blanketed the gardens in silence, transforming the estate into something from a Russian fairy tale. I continued my routine. Early walks when the cold bit through my inadequate coat, hours in the library, afternoons teaching Natasha and Mikhail. The children had become the bright spots in my gilded captivity. Natasha was advancing rapidly, her small fingers flying through Bach inventions with increasing confidence. Mikhail had abandoned piano in favor of begging me to teach him songs, which I did, his off-key but enthusiastic renditions of folk tunes echoing through the servants' quarters. Irina watched these lessons with something like gratitude, mixed with worry. "You are kind to them," she said one afternoon as we prepared tea after the children had gone to play. "But Miss LeBlanc, you should not become too attached. When Mr. Morozov releases you—" "I know." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "This is temporary." But even as I said it, I wondered. 4 months had passed. Dimitri's original estimate of 6 months to a year loomed. But I'd heard nothing about my brother's debt, about any progress toward my release. I existed in a strange limbo, neither prisoner nor free, neither servant nor guest. I saw Alexei 3 more times that month, always unexpectedly. The first time, I was in the conservatory, a glass-walled room off the south side of the house that I'd discovered held a grand piano, a Steinway so perfectly maintained it sang under my fingers. Elena had said nothing about the conservatory being off-limits, so I'd claimed it as my own in the late afternoons when the winter sun slanted through the glass and turned everything golden. I was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, lost in the melody's melancholy beauty, when I felt eyes on me. My hands stilled on the keys, and I turned to find Alexei standing in the doorway. "Don't stop." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. My heart hammered, but I turned back to the piano and continued. I felt his presence like a physical weight as he moved into the room, as he settled into one of the chairs positioned to face the piano. I played the piece through to its conclusion, the final notes hanging in the air between us. "You're classically trained," he observed. "Juilliard. Dropped out after my 2nd year when my parents died." I don't know why I told him that. The information felt too personal, too revealing. "Why piano?" I ran my fingers over the keys without pressing them. My grandmother was a concert pianist in Moscow before she emigrated. She taught me that music was the only language that couldn't be taken away, no matter what else you lost. Wise woman. She died when I was 12. But yes, she was. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with unspoken things. I risked a glance at him. He sat with his legs crossed, one arm draped over the back of the chair, watching me with those unsettling gray eyes. In the golden afternoon light, he looked younger than his 34 years, almost contemplative. "Dimitri says you've asked for nothing," he said finally. "No phone calls, no letters to your brother, no request to leave the estate even for a supervised walk outside the grounds. What would be the point? You've made it clear what I am here. Asking for privileges seems like a waste of breath. Most people in your situation would ask anyway. Bargain. Try to negotiate better terms." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not most people." "No." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "You're not." He stood abruptly, the moment breaking. "Play something else." It was a command, not a request. But something in his tone made it feel less like the order of a captor, and more like, I didn't know what. I chose another Chopin piece, a waltz this time, lighter and more playful. I felt him listening, felt the quality of his attention like a tangible thing. When I finished, he was gone. No goodbye, no acknowledgement. Just the faint scent of cedar smoke lingering in the air. The second time I saw him was less peaceful. I'd woken in the middle of the night to raised voices somewhere below. Not quite shouting, but close. I'd learned enough Russian from Irina to catch a few words. Preditel, traitor, krov, blood, smirt, death. The last word made ice settle in my stomach. Against my better judgment, I crept from my room and down the stairs, following the sound to Alexei's study. The door was ajar, light spilling into the darkened hallway. Through the gap, I saw him standing behind a massive desk, his face a mask of cold fury. Dmitri stood before him, along with 2 other men I didn't recognize. "He stole from us," one of the men said in accented English, presumably for my benefit, though they didn't know I was there. "The shipment is gone. $3 million worth of—" "I know what it's worth." Alexei's voice was ice. "What I want to know is how Petrov thought he could do this and live." "He has family," Dmitri said quietly. "A wife, children, which he should have considered before betraying us." Alexei poured himself a drink, the amber liquid catching the light. "Make an example, but make it clean. I don't want this traced back to us." My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the wall with a soft thump that sounded deafening in the quiet hallway. The conversation inside stopped. I ran. Quiet as I could, back up the stairs, my heart thundering so hard I thought it might burst. I made it to my room and closed the door just as I heard footsteps in the corridor below. I pressed my back against the door, shaking. Make an example. Make it clean. The casual way he'd ordered what sounded like an execution, as if discussing a business transaction rather than a human life. This was who he was, who they all were. And I'd been foolish enough, in those quiet moments in the library and conservatory, to forget it. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed, watching shadows move across the ceiling, trying not to think about a man named Petrov and what making an example might mean. The 3rd time I saw Alexei, he found me. It was a week before Christmas. I'd been in the library, curled in my favorite chair by the window, reading Anna Karenina in the original Russian, a language I'd studied but never quite mastered. I dozed off, the book open on my lap, lulled by the warmth of the fire and the silence of the house. I woke to find him sitting in the chair across from me. My breath caught. He was dressed more casually than I'd seen him. Black sweater, dark jeans, his hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. He was reading his own book, seemingly unconcerned by my presence. "How long have you been there?" My voice came out rough with sleep. 20 minutes. He didn't look up from his book. "You talk in your sleep, in Russian mostly. Your accent needs work." Heat flooded my cheeks. What did I say? Nothing coherent. Now he did look at me, and something in his expression made my pulse skip. "You apologized to someone named Yuri, repeatedly." My brother's name on his lips made my chest tighten. "Is he?" "He's fine. Working at one of our warehouses. Supervised, but unharmed." Alexei closed his book. "You worry about him?" "He's my brother. Of course I worry. Even though his stupidity is the reason you're here." The bluntness stung. He made a mistake. He's young. He's an adult who made adult choices with adult consequences. Alexei leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And you're paying for those choices. Does that not make you angry?" It did. God, it did. Some nights I lay awake, seething with resentment, with the unfairness of it all. But I'd learned young that anger without outlet was just poison. "Anger doesn't change anything," I said finally. "No, but it's honest." His eyes held mine. "I'd respect you more if you raged, screamed, threw things. This. Compliance. It's unnatural. Would you prefer me to be a problem?" I echoed his words from our first conversation. "I'd prefer you to be real." The words hung between us, intimate in a way that made my skin prickle. I looked away first, unable to hold his gaze. "I heard you," I said quietly. "Last week, in your study, you ordered someone killed." I expected denial, anger. Instead, he simply nodded. "Petrov stole from us, put 15 of my people at risk with his theft. In my world, That has only one consequence. And you don't feel anything? No guilt? I feel responsible. His voice hardened. For the people who depend on me, who trust me to protect them. Petrov chose to betray that trust. I chose to protect my family. Guilt is a luxury I can't afford. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself. I don't understand how you live like that. You don't have to understand. You just have to stay out of the way. He stood, moving to the fireplace. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Staying invisible. Not making waves. Existing in the margins of other people's lives. The observation cut deeper than it should have. You don't know me. Don't I? He turned, backlit by flames. You teach piano to children who aren't yours. You read books in languages you haven't mastered. You sing when you think no one's listening. You've been here 4 months and haven't asked me for a single thing. You're so busy being what everyone needs you to be that I'm not sure you know who you actually are. Anger flared, bright and welcome. And you do? Know who you are? I know exactly who I am. I'm the man who keeps 50 families fed and safe. I'm the man who makes hard decisions so others don't have to. I'm the man who inherited an empire built on blood and is trying to keep it from drowning in more. He moved closer. I know my purpose. Do you know yours? I stood, refusing to let him tower over me. My purpose right now is to be your collateral, your guarantee, your living insurance policy. You've made that very clear. That's what you are, not who. He was close now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Who are you, Larissa LeBlanc, when you're not being what other people need? I didn't have an answer. The realization hollowed me out. Alexei's expression softened, just fractionally. When you figure it out, let me know. He left me standing by the fire, shaking with emotions I couldn't name. Christmas came quietly. Elena allowed me to help Irina prepare a small celebration for the children. Cookies decorated with too much icing. Simple gifts I'd made from scraps of fabric and paper. Natasha and Mikhail's joy was pure, untainted by the reality of where we were, what this house represented. Alexei appeared briefly, dressed in an impeccable suit, clearly on his way somewhere important. He handed Natasha and Mikhail each a wrapped present, a professional keyboard for Natasha, a child-sized guitar for Mikhail. The children squealed with delight. His eyes found mine across the room. I mouthed, "Thank you." He nodded once and was gone. That night, alone in my room, I found a package on my bed. Inside was a book, a first edition of Rachmaninoff's piano concertos, with handwritten notes in the margins in Russian. The inscription on the flyleaf read, "To Katya, who made even the hardest pieces sing. With love, Grandmother Morozov." His grandmother's book. He'd given me his grandmother's book. I sat on the edge of my bed, the volume cradled in my hands, and felt something crack open in my chest. Something dangerous and foolish and completely unwelcome. I was beginning to understand Alexei Morozov. Worse, I was beginning to care. And in this house, caring was the most dangerous thing I could do. January arrived with bitter cold, and the strange realization that I'd been in the Morozov house for 5 months. 5 months of existing in the margins, of teaching children who weren't mine, of reading books in a library that felt like borrowed time. 5 months of catching glimpses of a man I was supposed to fear, but instead found myself thinking about at odd hours. The book Alexei had given me, his grandmother's annotated Rachmaninoff, sat on my nightstand like an accusation. I played through the concertos in the conservatory, following her notes, her insights into phrasing and dynamics. She'd been brilliant. The marginalia revealed a mind that understood music not as performance, but as conversation, as prayer. I wondered if Alexei knew what he'd given me. if he understood that this wasn't just a book, but a piece of his history, his family. I wondered why he'd thought I deserved it. The household had settled into a rhythm around me. Elena no longer watched me with quite so much suspicion. Irina invited me to share tea with her after the children's lessons. Even Dmitri, the taciturn driver, had nodded a greeting when we passed in the hallway. But Alexei remained a ghost, a presence felt more than seen. I heard him on phone calls conducted in rapid Russian. I smelled cedar smoke in rooms he'd recently left. Once, I found a coffee cup still warm in the library, abandoned on the table beside a legal document in Cyrillic that I quickly stopped trying to read. It was Dmitri, the cousin who'd first contacted me about the arrangement, who broke the pattern. I encountered him in the library on a gray afternoon in mid-January. I'd been shelving books when he appeared in the doorway. His expression pleasant, but his eyes calculating in a way that made my instincts scream. "Miss LeBlanc, how are you settling in?" I set down the books I'd been holding. "Well enough, thank you. I hear you've been teaching Irina's children. How charitable." He moved into the room, his movements fluid, almost lazy. My cousin has always had a weakness for charity cases. Something in his tone set my teeth on edge. "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Morozov?" "Dmitri, please. We're practically family now." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I wanted to check on you. Ensure you're being treated well. After all, your comfort reflects on our family's honor." "I have no complaints." "No?" He picked up a book from the table, examining it with feigned interest. 5 months is a long time to be separated from your life, your brother, your students. Don't you miss them? Of course. I kept my voice neutral, but I understand the terms of the arrangement. Such acceptance. Admirable. He set the book down with deliberate care. Though I wonder, does Alexei appreciate your compliance? Or does he simply take it for granted? I didn't answer. Dmitri smiled. He's always been like that, you know, taking things for granted. His father's empire, handed to him on a silver platter. The loyalty of men twice his age who should have inherited leadership. Even you, a beautiful, educated woman living under his roof, and he barely acknowledges your existence. The implication in his words made my skin crawl. Mr. Morozov. Dmitri, he corrected, moving closer. I'm not like my cousin, Miss LeBlanc. I see you. I appreciate what you've sacrificed. If you ever need anything at all, I hope you'll come to me. Before I could respond, Alexei's voice cut through the room like a blade. Dmitri. We both turned. Alexei stood in the doorway, his expression neutral, but his eyes hard as flint. He looked between us, taking in the distance, or lack thereof, between Dmitri and me. Cousin, Dmitri's pleasant mask never slipped. I was just welcoming Miss LeBlanc, ensuring she feels at home. How thoughtful. Alexei's voice was soft, dangerous. I'm sure she appreciates your concern. Now, we have business to discuss. My office, 5 minutes. It wasn't a request. Dmitri inclined his head, shot me one last smile, and departed. Alexei remained in the doorway, his gaze still fixed on me. What did he want? Not angry, something else. He said he was checking on me. I wrapped my arms around myself, making sure I was comfortable. And were you? Comfortable? I met his eyes. No. Something shifted in his expression. Good. Stay away from Dmitri. If he approaches you again, tell me immediately. Why? What? Just do as I ask. He moved into the room, the energy changing. How are the children progressing? The abrupt subject change through me. Natasha is ready to perform. Mikhail is. Enthusiastic, if not technically proficient. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Like his father was with the balalaika, according to Irina. You knew his father? Victor served my father for 20 years. He died protecting him. Alexei's voice was matter-of-fact, but I caught something beneath it. Taking care of his family is the least I can do. I thought of the expensive instruments he'd given the children, of Irina's secure position in his household. Acts of loyalty repaid. That's why you let me teach them, I said slowly. Not kindness. Obligation. Does it matter? The result is the same. It matters to me. He studied me for a long moment. Why? Because I'd like to think some things in this house aren't transactions, aren't just business. Everything is business, Larissa. The sooner you understand that, the safer you'll be. But even as he said it, his gaze dropped to the book on my nightstand. His grandmother's Rachmaninoff. When his eyes returned to mine, something unspoken passed between us. I should go, I said, suddenly needing distance from whatever this was. Wait. He reached into his jacket and produced a phone. Not a smartphone, but a simple flip phone, the kind you could buy prepaid. For emergencies, it has one number programmed. Mine. I stared at it. I don't understand. If Dmitri or anyone else makes you uncomfortable, if you need something, use it. He placed it in my hand, his fingers brushing mine. Don't tell Elena. Don't tell anyone. Why are you doing this? For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you were right. Some things shouldn't be transactions. He left before I could respond. I didn't use the phone. But knowing I had it changed something. Changed the way I moved through the house. The way I slept at night. I wasn't quite a prisoner anymore. Wasn't quite collateral. I didn't know what I was. The winter deepened. I played piano for hours in the conservatory, working through the Rachmaninoff concertos, losing myself in the complexity of the compositions. Sometimes I felt eyes on me, and would turn to find Alexei standing in the doorway, listening. He never said anything, just nodded and moved on. But those moments accumulated, built into something I didn't want to examine. Then came the night of February 10th, when everything changed. I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a long afternoon teaching Natasha a particularly difficult Chopin etude. I was nearly asleep when raised voices jerked me awake. Not from downstairs this time, but from the hallway outside my room. Telling you it's a mistake to trust him. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Your opinion is noted. Alexei, cold as winter stone. He's been meeting with the Volkov family 3 times in the past month. The woman again. He's planning something. Dmitri is ambitious. I've known this since we were children. It doesn't make him a traitor. Ambition and loyalty aren't the same thing, Alexei. A pause. Then, I'll handle it. Footsteps receded. I lay in the darkness, my heart pounding. Dmitri. The Volkov family. I'd heard that name whispered by the staff, always with fear. A rival organization. One that had been at war with the Morozovs for decades. I thought of Dmitri's calculating eyes. His comments about Alexei taking things for granted. His suggestion that I come to him if I needed anything. The phone Alexei had given me sat in my nightstand drawer. I reached for it, then hesitated. What would I even say? That I'd overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear? That I had a bad feeling about his cousin? I put the phone back and tried to sleep. The next 2 weeks passed in uneasy normalcy. I watched Dmitri more carefully now, noticed how he moved through the house with proprietary ease, how he spoke to the staff with an authority that almost rivaled Alexei's. I noticed how Alexei watched him in return, his expression revealing nothing. Something was building. I could feel it like the pressure before a storm. It was Irina who confirmed my suspicions. Miss LeBlanc, she said one afternoon as we prepared tea after the children's lesson, I must ask you something. Her tone made me set down the kettle. Of course, if you were to overhear something important, would you tell Mr. Alexei? My pulse quickened. What kind of something? She twisted her hands together. My Victor, before he died, he made me promise. If I ever learned of threats to Mr. Alexei's father, I should warn him. Now Mr. Alexei leads the family, and I think the promise still holds. Irina, what did you hear? Dmitry Morozov. He was speaking on the phone 3 days ago. I was cleaning the hallway outside his quarters. He did not know I was there. She lowered her voice. He spoke of a celebration. Mr. Alexei's birthday is in 2 weeks. There will be a party, many important families attending. And Dmitry said. She swallowed hard. He said it would be perfect timing, that no one would suspect, that by the end of the night leadership would change hands. Ice flooded my veins. He's planning to kill Alexei. I do not know for certain, but Miss LeBlanc, I am frightened. If I go to Mr. Alexei and I am wrong, Dmitry will know I spoke against him. My children, I'll tell him. The words came without thought. I'll use the phone he gave me. Dmitry doesn't know about it. Relief washed over her features. Thank you. Thank you. That night, alone in my room, I stared at the phone for 20 minutes before I found the courage to flip it open and press the single programmed number. He answered on the second ring. Larissa. Just my name, but the way he said it made my breath catch. I need to talk to you. In person. It's important. A pause. The library. 10 minutes. He was waiting when I arrived, standing by the fire, still dressed in the suit he'd worn to whatever meeting had kept him out until midnight. His tie was loosened, his jacket discarded. He looked tired in a way I'd never seen him look. What's wrong? Direct. No pretense. I told him everything. Irina's warning, the overheard phone call, Dmitry's meeting with the Volkovs, the woman's concern from 2 weeks ago. I watched his expression shift from attention to calculation to something harder, darker. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Irina is certain of what she heard? Yes, and I trust her. Why? He turned to face me fully. Because she's kind to you? Because she lets you teach her children? Because she loved her husband and he loved your father? Because she's been loyal to this family for 20 years? Because she's risking everything telling you this? I moved closer. And because I've watched Dmitry, the way he looks at you, the way he moves through this house like he already owns it. He's planning something. I feel it. Alexei's jaw tightened. Your feelings aren't evidence. No, but they're not nothing either. I held his gaze. You gave me this phone for emergencies. This is an emergency. He studied me for what felt like an eternity. Then, if you're wrong, if this is some misunderstanding or paranoia, then I'm wrong. But if I'm right and I said nothing, and something happened to you... I stopped, startled by the intensity of emotion in my own voice. You'd care? His voice was soft, dangerous. If something happened to me, I should have lied, should have said something neutral, safe. Instead, yes. The word hung between us, too honest, too raw. Alexei moved closer, closing the distance until we were almost touching. Why? I'm your captor. The man keeping you here against your will. The reason you've lost 5 months of your life. I know what you are. My voice shook. I've known from the beginning, but I also know. I see. I struggled for words. You gave me your grandmother's book. You bought instruments for children who mean nothing to you except that their father died protecting yours. You hear me singing when I think I'm alone. You're not just what you do. You're more than that. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. You're wrong. I'm exactly what I do. Nothing more. I don't believe you. Then you're a fool. But there was no heat in it. His thumb traced my lower lip, featherlight. A beautiful, stubborn, impossible fool. I should have stepped back, should have remembered what I was to him, collateral, guarantee, living insurance. Instead, I leaned into his touch. Alexei. The study door burst open. Dmitri rushed in, his face pale. Boss, we have a problem. The shipment from Gdansk. He stopped, taking in the scene. Alexei and me, standing too close, his hand still cradling my face. Dmitri's expression shifted, calculation replacing surprise. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were occupied. Alexei dropped his hand, stepping back. His voice was ice. What about Gdansk? Customs seized the container. The contact you'd arranged to smooth things over is claiming he never received payment. Impossible. I wired the money myself. That's what I thought, which is why I think we should discuss this. Privately. Dmitri's gaze flicked to me, dismissive. Larissa was just leaving. Alexei's tone was perfectly neutral, but I caught the warning in his eyes. We'll continue our conversation later. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and left. Behind me, I heard Dmitri's voice. Casual and concerned. Cousin, we need to talk about security. I'm worried there may be leaks in the organization. I walked back to my room on shaking legs, Irina's warning echoing in my mind. By the end of the night, leadership would change hands. Alexei's birthday party was in 12 days, and I had the terrible feeling that time was running out. The days leading to Alexei's birthday party passed with excruciating slowness. I watched Dmitri move through the house with increasing confidence, noticed how he inserted himself into conversations, how he questioned Alexei's decisions with a tone just shy of insubordination. I watched Alexei tolerate it with the patience of a man playing a longer game than anyone else could see. I didn't know if he believed my warning. He hadn't mentioned our conversation in the library, hadn't acknowledged the moment when his hand had cradled my face and the world had narrowed to just the two of us. He'd retreated into cold professionalism, into the role of untouchable leader. It made my chest ache in ways I refused to examine. The household buzzed with preparations for the party. Elena commanded an army of additional staff brought in to clean, polish, and prepare the mansion for the influx of guests. The formal dining room was opened and set with china that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Crystal chandeliers were cleaned until they sparkled. The ballroom, a room I hadn't even known existed, was transformed into something from a fairy tale. I helped where I could, grateful for the distraction. Irina and I worked together arranging flowers, our hands moving in practiced rhythm while she whispered updates. Dmitri has been meeting with the head of security, she murmured, her eyes on the roses she was trimming. I heard him say that, certain. Adjustments needed to be made for the party, for Mr. Alexei's protection. My hands stilled. What kind of adjustments? I do not know, but Miss LeBlanc, I am frightened. If Dmitri suspects that I overheard. He doesn't. I kept my voice low. And even if he did, Alexei won't let anything happen to you or the children. You trust him. Not a question, an observation. Did I? Trust implied a kind of faith that seemed foolish given my circumstances. But when I thought of Alexei, I didn't think of my captor. I thought of the man who'd given me his grandmother's book, who listened when I played piano, whose eyes had held something almost vulnerable when I'd admitted I would care if something happened to him. Yes, I said quietly. I trust him. Irina's expression softened. He is not like his father. The old Mr. Morozov, he was hard, cold. But Alexei, he has his grandmother's heart beneath all that ice. I thought of the annotations in the Rachmaninoff book, of a woman who'd understood music as conversation, as prayer. If Alexei had inherited even a fraction of her capacity for feeling, he hid it well. The party was set for Saturday evening. By Friday morning, the tension in the house had reached a breaking point. I saw it in the way Dmitri smiled too widely, in the way Alexei's shoulders carried a new tightness, in the way the security detail had doubled without anyone officially acknowledging it. I was in the conservatory, seeking refuge in the piano, when Alexei found me. "Play something," he said from the doorway. I didn't argue. I played Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, the piece his grandmother had annotated most heavily. Her notes spoke of darkness and light, of finding beauty in melancholy. I poured everything into the music, my fear, my growing feelings for a man I shouldn't care about, my desperate hope that I was wrong about Dmitri. When I finished, Alexei was sitting in his usual chair, his expression unreadable. "Tomorrow night," he said without preamble, "I want you to stay in your room, no matter what you hear, no matter what happens. Promise me." My heart stuttered. "You believe me? About Dmitri?" "I've had him watched since our conversation. The evidence is concerning." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "There will be security everywhere. I'll be protected. But I need to know you're safe." "Why do you care?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "I'm just collateral. Remember?" His eyes met mine, gray as winter storms. "You haven't been just anything in a long time." The admission hung between us, weighted with everything we hadn't said. "Alexei, promise me, Larissa. Promise me you'll stay in your room." I should have agreed. Should have taken the easy out, the safe option. Instead, what if something goes wrong? What if you need... I won't need anything except the knowledge that you're safe. He stood, moving closer. "You've already given me the warning. You've already done more than anyone should ask of their captive. Don't risk yourself further. Because I'm valuable collateral? Because you matter." The words came out rough, almost angry. "To the children. To Irina. To..." He stopped, jaw tightening. "To you?" I supplied softly. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, the vulnerability in his expression nearly undid me. I don't have the luxury of allowing people to matter. Everyone who matters becomes a target, a weakness to be exploited. You've been safe precisely because no one knows what you've become to me. And what have I become? He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with devastating gentleness. The one person in this house who sees me and still stays. I don't have a choice about staying. You have a choice about how you see me. Most people look at me and see a monster. You look at me and see... I don't know what you see. But it's not fear. I thought of all the moments I'd watched him. The careful way he handled his grandmother's book. The kindness he showed to Victor's children. The weight he carried on those broad shoulders. The burden of keeping an empire from drowning in blood. I see a man trying to be better than what he was born to, I said. A man who gave me his grandmother's book because he knew I'd understand the music the way she did. A man who's terrified that tomorrow night his cousin will try to kill him, but who's more worried about a piano teacher's safety than his own. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. "You're wrong about me, Larissa. I'm not good. I'm not redeemable. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the full extent. I know what you are. I've known from the beginning. Then why..." His voice cracked slightly. "Why do you look at me like that? Like what? Like I'm worth saving." My breath caught. I covered his hand with mine, pressing it more firmly against my face. "Because you are." For a long moment we stood frozen, the conservatory quiet except for our breathing. Then Alexei leaned down slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, soft, questioning. I answered by rising on my toes, by wrapping my hand around the back of his neck, by kissing him with all the complicated, impossible feelings I'd been fighting for months. He made a sound low in his throat and pulled me closer, one arm banding around my waist. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and honest. This wasn't captor and captive. This was two people who'd been circling each other for months, finally allowing themselves to collide. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "I can't keep you," he whispered, "even if I wanted to. You deserve better than this life, better than me. Don't I get a say in what I deserve?" "No, because you'd choose wrong." He pressed one more kiss to my forehead, achingly gentle. "Promise me you'll stay in your room tomorrow night." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him I was done being obedient, done staying out of the way, but the plea in his eyes unmade me. "I promise." Saturday arrived with crystalline winter sunshine that felt like mockery. I spent the day helping with last-minute preparations while trying not to think about what the evening might bring. Guests began arriving at 7, their expensive cars lining the circular drive. I watched from my window as Boston's elite filed into the mansion. Politicians, judges, business owners, and others whose exact professions were deliberately vague. This was Alexi's world. Power and danger wrapped in elegant clothing, violence lurking beneath polite conversation. At 8, I heard music start below, the string quartet Elena had hired. At 9, I heard laughter and the clink of glasses. At 10, someone gave a toast. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard Alexei's name and the resulting applause. At 10:30, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A woman's scream, cut short. The music stopped abruptly. Shouts in Russian and English, overlapping. I was on my feet and out my door before I remembered my promise. The house was chaos. Guests flooded the hallways, security shouting for people to evacuate. I fought against the tide, searching for Alexei in the mass of panicked bodies. Then I saw him. He was in the grand hallway at the base of the stairs, Dmitri beside him, both of them surrounded by security. They appeared to be arguing about something. Dmitri's face was flushed, his voice carrying, "Need to get you to the safe room now?" "I'm not hiding from threats in my own house," Alexei countered. That's when I saw him. A man on the second-floor balcony, moving with purpose through the fleeing guests. His hand went to his jacket, and I saw the glint of metal. A gun. Time seemed to slow. I saw the man's arm extend, saw him sight down the barrel, saw Dmitri step subtly aside, leaving Alexei exposed. I was running before conscious thought caught up with my body. "Alexei!" I screamed his name as I threw myself forward. His head turned, eyes widening as he saw me. I crashed into him with all my weight, sending us both sprawling. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, and something white-hot tore through my shoulder. I heard Alexei shouting, heard more gunshots, heard screams. Then his face was above mine, his hands on my shoulders, and I realized I was lying on the marble floor in a spreading pool of something warm. Larissa, look at me." His voice cracked. "Why did you—" "I told you to stay in your room." "You're welcome," I managed. Then the world tilted sideways and went dark. I woke to whiteness. White ceiling, white walls, the antiseptic white smell of hospitals. Pain radiated from my shoulder in waves, sharp and insistent. I tried to move and gasped as fire shot through my upper body. "Don't." A rough voice, familiar. "The doctor said you need to stay still." I turned my head, slowly, carefully, and found Alexei sitting in a chair beside my bed. He looked terrible. His normally immaculate appearance was destroyed. Stubble darkened his jaw. His shirt was wrinkled and stained with what might have been blood. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. But he was alive, whole. "You're okay," I whispered, my throat raw. His laugh was humorless. "I'm okay. You took a bullet meant for me and you're asking if I'm okay." Memories filtered back. The party, the gunman, throwing myself at Alexei, the impact and burn of the bullet. "Dmitri," I said. He stepped aside. He knew. "I know." Alexei's voice was flat, deadly. The gunman was one of his people, brought in as extra security for the party. Dmitri had positioned himself perfectly to give the shooter a clear line of sight. "If you hadn't." He stopped, jaw clenched. The bullet would have hit me center mass. "Is he dead? Shot while trying to escape?" His eyes met mine. By my hand. I should have felt horror. Should have recoiled from the casual admission of killing his own cousin. Instead, I felt only relief. "Good." Alexei's eyebrows rose slightly. "Good. He was going to kill you. He deserved what he got." I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through me. "Stop moving." Alexei stood, pressing a button for the nurse. "You were in surgery for 3 hours. The bullet shattered your clavicle, damaged muscle and tissue. You're lucky to be alive." "How long have I been unconscious?" 2 days. He sat back down heavily, as if standing had taken all his energy. "You spiked a fever after surgery. The doctors were worried about infection, sepsis. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture uncharacteristically uncertain. "I thought I'd lost you." The raw admission hung in the air between us. I reached out with my good hand, finding his. His fingers immediately intertwined with mine, gripping almost painfully tight. "I'm here," I said softly. "I'm okay." "You shouldn't be here. You should be in your apartment teaching piano to children who aren't caught up in this world. You should be safe." His voice broke slightly. "Instead, you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. Why? Why would you do something so monumentally stupid?" "Because the alternative was watching you die." I squeezed his hand. "I couldn't let that happen." "Why not? I'm your captor. I took you from your life, held you hostage for 5 months. You gave me your grandmother's book. You listened when I played piano. You worried about a piano teacher's safety more than your own. You made me see." I struggled for words through the medication haze. "You made me see the man underneath the monster you pretend to be." Alexei closed his eyes, bringing my hand to his lips. He pressed a kiss to my knuckles, and I felt moisture that might have been tears. "You almost died, Larissa. You almost died saving me. Do you understand what that means? What you've done? I saved your life. You've ruined me." He looked at me then, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "Because now I can't let you go. I've tried. God knows I've tried to think of you as just collateral, just business. But you're not. You haven't been for months. And now that you've nearly died for me." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "How am I supposed to let you walk away from this? From me?" My heart stuttered. "Who says I want to walk away?" "You should want to. Any sane person would run from what I am, from this life. Maybe I'm not sane." I managed a weak smile. "I fell for my captor. That's definitely not sane." His breath caught. "Fell?" The truth sat between us, impossible to take back. "I love you. I probably have for weeks, maybe longer. I tried not to. But Alexei, when I saw that gun pointed at you, the only thing I could think was that I couldn't lose you. Not like that. Not ever." For a long moment, he simply stared at me. Then he leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine with exquisite gentleness. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "I don't deserve your love or your sacrifice, or the way you look at me like I'm worth saving. But God help me, I'm too selfish to give you up. Then don't. He kissed me then, soft and careful, mindful of my injuries. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. I love you, Larissa LeBlanc. I think I've loved you since the day I found you in the library, surrounded by books, singing under your breath. You walked into my world and made it lighter, better. You made me want to be better. The nurse arrived, followed by a doctor who checked my vitals and adjusted my medication. Alexei stepped back, wiping his eyes, composing himself back into the controlled leader. But I saw the way his hand shook slightly as he shoved it in his pocket. Saw the way his gaze kept returning to me as if to reassure himself I was real, alive. She needs rest, the doctor said in accented English. The next few weeks will be critical for healing. No stress, no excitement. After they left, Alexei returned to his chair. I've arranged for you to have a private room, round-the-clock nursing care, the best physical therapists in the city. Alexei. He stopped, looking at me. Just sit with me. That's all I need. So he did. He pulled his chair closer to the bed, took my hand again, and simply sat. No words, just his presence, and the steady rhythm of his thumb stroking circles on my wrist. I drifted in and out of sleep. Each time I woke, he was there. Sometimes reading documents with his free hand. Sometimes just watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. Once, I woke to find him asleep in the chair. His head rested on the edge of my bed, still holding my hand. The days blurred. Alexei rarely left except when forced to attend to unavoidable business. He brought books for me to read, had the hospital bring in a small keyboard so I could play with one hand when I was strong enough. He updated me on the household. Irina and the children were safe, moved to a secure location as a precaution. Elena had been horrified when she heard what I'd done, had sent flowers with a note in Russian that Alexei translated. You are braver than any soldier I have known. A week after I'd been shot, Alexei arrived with a serious expression and a manila envelope. What's that? I asked, trying to sit up straighter in the bed. He helped me adjust the pillows, then sat beside me on the mattress. Your brother's debt. It's paid. My breath caught. What? The $140,000, plus interest, settled in full as of this morning. He opened the envelope and showed me documents, transaction receipts, a notarized letter confirming the debt was satisfied. How? I paid it. From my personal accounts, not family money. Yuri is free. The contract binding you to my household is void. He set the envelope aside and took both my hands in his, careful of my injured shoulder. You're free, Larissa. You can leave whenever you want. Go back to your apartment, your students, your life. I've arranged for compensation, enough to cover your lost wages and then some. You never have to see me again if you don't want to. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Free. The word I'd been longing to hear for 5 months. The release I'd dreamed of, so why did it feel like my heart was breaking? What if I don't want to leave? I whispered. His eyes closed briefly. Don't say that because you feel obligated. Don't stay because you think you owe me. I'm not. I squeezed his hands. Alexei, look at me. He did, and I saw fear there. Real, genuine fear that undid me completely. I don't want to go back to my old life. I took a shaky breath. I want to stay. With you. Not as collateral or a captive or whatever I was before. As your equal. As someone who chooses to be here. The life I lead. I know what your life is. I've lived in your house for 5 months. I've seen enough to understand what I'd be choosing. I touched his face with my good hand. And I'm still choosing it. Choosing you. Why? The question was raw, broken. After everything. Because you're worth it. Because when you thought I was dying, you cried. Because you gave me your grandmother's book and listened when I played piano and worried about children who weren't yours, simply because their father served your family. Because underneath all the ice and the control and the terrifying power, you have your grandmother's heart. I smiled through sudden tears. And I love that heart. I love you. He pulled me into his arms, carefully, so carefully, and I felt him shaking against me. I love you, he said into my hair. I love you so much it terrifies me. You've become the one thing in this world I can't afford to lose. Then don't lose me. Keep me. But as your equal, Alexei. As your partner, not your possession. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and the vulnerability in his expression nearly broke me. My equal, he repeated. My partner. A pause. My wife? My heart stopped. What? Marry me, Larissa. Not because of any debt or obligation. Not because you saved my life or because you're trapped here. Marry me because you love me and I love you, and I want to spend whatever life I have left making you happy. His hand cupped my face. Marry me because you choose to, with full knowledge of what you're choosing. And if you say no, I'll understand. I'll let you go and I'll never... Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. The kiss was soft, reverent, full of promise. When we broke apart, both smiling through tears, Alexei rested his forehead against mine. I'm still working out how to be the man you deserve, he admitted. I don't know if I'll ever be fully good. But I swear to you, Larissa, I will try every day to be worthy of your love. You already are, I whispered. You just can't see it yet. 3 weeks later, I was finally released from the hospital. My shoulder was still weak, the physical therapy ahead of me daunting, but I was alive, whole, and going home, though home had taken on an entirely new meaning. Alexei had wanted to carry me from the car to the house, but I'd insisted on walking, even if it was slow and careful. I needed to walk into this next chapter of my life on my own feet, as his equal, not as someone who needed to be carried. The mansion looked different somehow. Maybe because I was seeing it through new eyes, not as a prisoner viewing her cage, but as someone who'd chosen to make this place her sanctuary. Elena met us at the door, and to my shock she smiled. An actual smile that transformed her stern features. "Welcome home, Miss LeBlanc," she said. Then, after a pause, "The children have been asking for you." My chest warmed. "Are they here?" "In the conservatory. I hope you do not mind. Mr. Morozov had the piano tuned for your return." I looked at Alexei, who shrugged with obviously feigned innocence. "You'll need to keep up your strength. The children are excellent motivation." The conservatory had indeed been transformed. The piano gleamed, fresh flowers adorned the small tables, and Natasha and Mikhail practically vibrated with excitement when they saw me. "Miss Larissa!" Natasha launched herself forward, then remembered my injury at the last second and gently hugged my waist instead. "Mama said you were very brave, that you saved Mr. Alexei." "I did what anyone would do," I said, stroking her dark hair. "Not anyone," Irina said from the doorway, Alexei behind her. "Only someone with a very good heart." I spent the afternoon with the children, playing simple pieces with my good hand, while Natasha played the more complex parts. Mikhail sang along, delightfully off-key, and Alexei watched from his usual chair, that soft expression on his face that I was beginning to recognize as peace. This was what I'd chosen. This strange, complicated family that had formed in the unlikeliest of circumstances. That night, after the children had gone home and the house had settled into quiet, I found Alexei in his study. He was reviewing documents, but set them aside immediately when I entered. "You should be resting," he said, rising. I've been resting for 3 weeks. I needed to see you. I moved to his desk, and he pulled me gently onto his lap, mindful of my shoulder. I wanted to ask you something. Anything. My brother, Yuri. Can I see him? Alexei's expression shifted, became more guarded. Are you sure? The last time you saw him, it was because of his debt, because of what his choices cost you. He's still my brother, and yes, he made terrible choices. But Alexei, I touched his face. You've shown me that people can be more than their worst decisions, that they can change, grow, become better. I want to give Yuri that same chance. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. I'll arrange it. But Larissa, he works for me now. In one of the legitimate businesses, a warehouse, inventory management. He's being watched, not because I don't trust him, but because others might target him to get to you. I understand. Do you? His arms tightened around me slightly. This is what your life will be now. Security details, watched movements, the constant awareness that being connected to me makes you a target. Being connected to you also makes me loved, protected, and happier than I've been in years. I'll take the surveillance if it means I get to keep you. He buried his face in my hair. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You gave a scared piano teacher a place to hide. You let her teach your cook's children. You listened when she played piano and sang when she thought no one was listening. You gave her your grandmother's book. I turned in his lap to face him more fully. You saw her, Alexei. Really saw her. That's what you did. The days turned to weeks. My shoulder healed slowly but steadily. Yuri came to visit, full of apologies and genuine remorse. I'd expected to feel angry, but seeing him, how much he'd grown in the months we'd been apart, how seriously he was taking his second chance, I felt only relief that we'd both survived our respective crucibles. I'm sorry, Risa, he said, using the childhood nickname. I'm so sorry for what I put you through. I know. I hugged him with my good arm. Just don't waste this opportunity, okay? Alexei is giving you a real chance. Don't throw it away. I won't, I swear. Elena gradually thawed, even going so far as to ask my opinion on household matters. The staff began treating me less like a strange presence and more like a member of the family. Irina's children called me Aunt Larissa. Slowly, inexorably, I was weaving myself into the fabric of the Morozov household. But the moment that changed everything came on a cold evening in late March. Alexei had been unusually quiet all day, distracted during meals, distant even when we were together. I'd given him space, understanding that running an empire, even a partially legitimate one, came with pressures I couldn't fully comprehend. That night, he found me in the library, curled in my favorite chair with his grandmother's Rachmaninoff book. Come with me, he said, offering his hand. There's something I want to show you. He led me not through the house, but outside, to the gardens that had been my refuge during those early days of captivity. The spring night was cool, but not cold, stars scattered across the clear sky. We walked in silence until we reached a small clearing I'd never noticed before, hidden behind a screen of trees. In the center stood a bench, new, made of dark wood with an engraving I couldn't read in the dim light. When I was a boy, Alexei said, still holding my hand, my grandmother would bring me here. This was her thinking place, she called it, where she came when the world became too loud, too demanding. After she died, I couldn't come here. It hurt too much. Alexei, let me finish. He pulled me gently to the bench, and we sat. I haven't been able to come here in 15 years, but tonight I realized, with you, I can. With you, I can remember her without it destroying me, because you understand what she understood. that music is conversation, that beauty matters even in darkness, that some things are worth fighting for even when the cost is high. I squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I had this bench made, he continued. Look at the engraving. He pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to illuminate the words carved into the dark wood. Russian first, then English below. For Katya, who taught me that love is the only thing worth protecting. And for Larissa, who taught me I was worth saving. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Alexei, I told you once that everything is business, that nothing happens without a transaction. He turned to face me fully. I was wrong. You proved me wrong. You gave me everything. Your trust, your care, your very life, without asking for anything in return. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You saved me too, I whispered. You gave me a purpose when I'd lost mine. You made me see that I'd been living in the margins of my own life, being what everyone needed instead of being myself. You saw me, Alexei, the real me. And you loved her anyway. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and my breath caught. I know I already asked you to marry me in that hospital room, he said, opening it to reveal a ring, platinum with a single perfect diamond, simple and elegant. But I want to do it right this time. Not when you're injured and medicated and possibly not thinking clearly. I want to ask you when you're whole and healthy and have had time to truly understand what you're choosing. Alexei. Larissa LeBlanc, you walked into my life as collateral and became the only thing I'd die to protect. You saw past the monster I've been told I am and found something worth saving. You love me despite knowing exactly what I am, what I've done, what I'm capable of. You're brave and stubborn and impossibly kind, and I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. His voice thickened with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you choose this life, this world, me? Not because you have to, but because you want to? I couldn't speak through my tears, so I simply nodded and held out my hand. He slid the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, then pulled me into his arms, carefully, always so careful of my healing shoulder. We sat there in his grandmother's thinking place, holding each other under the stars, and I marveled at the journey that had brought us here. I choose you, I whispered into his chest. Every day, in every way, I choose us. Thank God, he murmured against my hair. Thank God. We were married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony in the conservatory, surrounded by the people who mattered, Irina and her children, Elena, who'd become something like a protective aunt, Yuri, who cried through the entire ceremony, and a handful of Alexei's most trusted people. I wore a simple silk dress the color of cream, carried a bouquet of the wildflowers that grew in the gardens. Alexei wore a dark suit and looked at me like I'd hung the moon. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, when Alexei kissed me with a gentleness that belied his reputation, I felt the final chains of my past life fall away. I was no longer Larissa LeBlanc, piano teacher, sister, survivor. I was Larissa Morozov, wife, chosen family, woman who'd found love in the most unexpected place. As we walked back down the aisle, really just the path between chairs in the conservatory, Natasha played a simple wedding march on the piano. I caught Alexei's eye and saw them shining with unshed tears. I love you, he mouthed. I love you too, I mouthed back. That night, alone in our room, not the guest room where I'd spent months as a captive, but the master suite that was now truly ours, Alexei pulled me close. I have something to tell you, he said, his voice serious enough to make my heart skip. About the business. I tensed. What about it? I'm transitioning out of the less legitimate aspects. It will take time, years, probably. These kinds of connections don't disappear overnight. But I'm working with federal investigators, providing information about other organizations in exchange for immunity for my people. I pulled back to look at him. You're cooperating with the police. With the FBI, it's complicated, dangerous. But Larissa, I meant what I said about being worthy of you. I can't undo the things I've done, but I can stop doing them. I can build something better. For us. For the family we might have someday. Family. The word settled in my chest, warm and terrifying and wonderful. That's why you were so distracted last week, I said, understanding dawning. You were meeting with them. He nodded. I wanted to tell you, but I needed to make sure the arrangements were solid first. I won't pretend this makes me suddenly clean. The things I've done, the blood on my hands, that doesn't wash off. But going forward, the Morozov name can mean something different, something better. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my gaze. You're already better, Alexei. You're already more than what you were born to be, and I'm so proud of you for taking this step. You made it possible. You made me believe I could be more than my father's son. He kissed me softly. Thank you for saving me. In every way. Thank you for seeing me. For making me believe I was worth more than the margins. We held each other as the night deepened around us. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something real from the ashes of captivity and fear. I thought of the frightened woman who'd stepped into this house 6 months ago, believing she was nothing more than collateral, nothing more than a guarantee against bad debts. I thought of the cold, controlled man who'd held himself apart from everyone, convinced he was beyond redemption. We'd both been wrong. Love, I'd learned, wasn't a transaction. It wasn't something you bargained for or negotiated. It was something that crept up on you in quiet moments, while playing piano, while teaching children, while watching someone cry at the thought of losing you. It was something worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. And as Alexei's arms tightened around me, as I felt the steady beat of his heart against mine, I knew with absolute certainty I'd made the right choice. Not because I had to, because I wanted to, because I loved him, and because against all odds, he loved me too.